Hey guys, it's Priya. Welcome back to the F Word. Today, we're speaking with my good friend, the financial literacy OG of them all, Farnoosh Torabi. Farnoosh, I'm going to give your full bio because it's so impressive. Farnoosh Torabi is one of America's leading personal finance experts. She's the host of the award-winning podcast So Money that has earned over 30 million downloads. She is a sought-after speaker and author of multiple books. Her newest is entitled A Healthy State of Panic, part memoir, part guidebook on how fear can be a superpower to achieve true wealth and career success. Along with being featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Time Magazine, Farnoosh has appeared frequently on Today, Good Morning America, and so many more. She's a graduate of Penn State with a degree in finance and international business and holds a master's degree from Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism. Farnoosh lives on the East Coast with her husband and two adorable children. I threw in the word adorable into your bio. Yeah, you've got like 15 jobs. Thanks for making the time. Who the f am I to tell you what to do with your money? My name is Priya Milani, currently managing millions of hardworking dollars. Enough foreplay. Let's talk money. Welcome to the F Word. Smart money, no bull. Farnoosh, you moved across the river. You left me.
I'm sorry. I know,
My
but
gosh.
it was a confluence of things, as one realizes. And I think this might be interesting for your audience. I lived in New York City for almost 20 years. Wouldn't change a thing. But once I started to have kids and they were out of diapers, and now we're like navigating schools and we're living, you know, what we thought originally was like this lovely part of town. But then when you have kids, like the noise, the traffic, all that doesn't it really does start to affect you. And for some people living in New York, it's very expensive, but you kind of make it work. You like live with 6 roommates, you eat tuna fish out of a can for as long as you can. But then when you have kids, like shit gets real.
Yeah.
And the logistics and conveniences of life that didn't bother you before, like whatever, I'll just schlep it on the train. If the train breaks down, I'll bring a book. But like if you're with a kid, that the equation is different. And so for us,
Totally.
we were experiencing like what I call these diminishing returns of living in this city that we still love, but it just wasn't serving us. The ROI wasn't there where it was for us, for 2 decades. So anyway.
Well, I'm very excited to have you on today, and I'm going to jump right in. We have so much amazing stuff to cover with regards to your book. So, Farnoosh,
So Priya,
a lot of people in their 30s, specifically my audience, are facing big life milestones, right? Buying their first home, starting a family, navigating next steps in their career. And one might say that all those moments are full of financial fear.
yes.
In your book, A Healthy State of Panic, you highlight fear as the exact tool you need to get ahead, which I think is super interesting because most of us just tend to avoid fear. Can you start maybe by just giving us the big picture idea of how someone can use fear to their advantage?
Absolutely. And I'll do one other thing, which is just to take an even bigger step back and talk about why fear is useful. You said that often we avoid it, we run away from it. That's absolutely true. We live in a culture that I don't think is just the American culture. I think it's just the way that you deal with fear wherever you live. It's universal that fear is considered to be a bad feeling. It's a feeling to be embarrassed about, to be
A weakness.
shamed. Right. It's a weakness. There are many, many books on leadership and money and how to even, just be a badass. That's like, you can't be fearful. You got to be fearless, right? All the way back to the Great Depression. Remember that famous saying, fear nothing but fear itself. But like, we were in a depression. If you weren't afraid, were you even alive? Right? You didn't know how you were going to put food on the table. You didn't know how you were going to get the next job. And so fear is normal, fear is natural. And I, for one, have a very intimate relationship with it as the daughter of immigrants. It's all in the book. I don't need to go into it on the podcast, but I grew up very much afraid, almost by design. My parents used fear, they've admitted on the record, to kind of keep me, quote unquote, safe. That they didn't really know how else to best parent me in a world that was very foreign to them. And also, my mother was extremely young. There were language barriers. It was the 80s, a lot of fearful headlines about kidnappings. And oh my gosh, the list goes on. And so they would tell me things, whether they were true or not, like, if you are in a mall, for example, and you disappear from us, someone will steal you. Or if you're at lunch at school and someone shares their snack with you, you will get sick. And so I just became this really defensive little girl that had a lot of anxiety. But fast forward to my adult years, I harbored that fear. I carried that fear into my 20s and my 30s. But somehow along the way, I learned how to have a relationship with fear, because I think what happened was I realized the more that I ran away from it, the worse things got.
Mm,
And why? Because again, fear is personal. Fear tells a very personal story. When you're afraid of something, and I'm not talking about spiders or like being in an airplane, but when you're afraid of making a big life choice that involves money, that involves your career, that involves relationships, and you're feeling fear, perhaps it's because it's that voice inside of you that says, hold on, we care about this. Let's examine. Let's
mm,
take it slow. Let's ask more questions. Let's figure out if this is really aligned with who we are and what we want to do. That is what the fear is telling you. At least that's what I want people to trust in that fear in that moment, so that they don't do what a lot of us end up doing, is ignoring it, feeling like it's not there, and then going and doing that thing, pretending. And in that moment, we've lost sight of who we are, what our values are, and we will probably make a stupid decision that we
mm,
will regret, because we weren't doing it in touch with our feelings. I mean, not to get woo woo, but like there was actually a study that the year I came out with this book in 2023, there was a giant study across multiple universities that found that those who view these quote unquote negative feelings like fear and sadness and anger as bad are less happy than those who look at these words, feel these feelings, and even just have like a neutral relationship to these feelings. Or maybe they do think that there's a positive in them, but they're happier. And the simple answer is because they are more in tune with their emotions. They hold space for all their feelings, and therefore they walk through life a little bit more, I think, together, and with a deeper understanding of who they are and where they came from. And what better place to make these big life decisions, right? We talk about money not just in the context of dollars and cents, but like, is it aligned with what you care about?
mm.
And if you're feeling fear, like maybe we should sit and ask that fear some questions to decide whether this is the thing that I want to do. And even if it still is, you can still do it scared, but you're doing it equipped with an understanding of what you care about. So when you go to, you know, start that new job or take on that new investment or buy that house, you will be more vigilant and aware of what to protect. Does that make
Well,
sense? I feel like
absolutely.
it
So
took me
well said.
40 years to figure this out, and then I wrote the book.
Such a good book. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say embrace fear, but what you're saying is it truly is a signal.
It's a signal. People will say to me, "This sounds like easy to do, but in actuality, it's hard." And I say, "And yet, all these years of your life, you have been told to be fearless. That's somehow easy? You're telling me it's easier to be fearless than to just feel the fear and ask it some questions and reorient your mindset to go, this might have some information for me that could be useful." Right? Like I will just flip the script on you. It's not easy to be fearless. It's not working for a lot of us if you haven't noticed, right? Like the world's a scary place.
And you can still ask yourself these questions through the fear and end up doing it scared anyway.
Yes, but at least you've respected yourself through the process.
Right, right. Paying attention to the fear. So, okay, so if one of my listeners, like bring this down, like make it really, really tactical. If one of my listeners is staring at a scary financial decision, maybe putting in an offer on a home or the scariest, deciding whether or not to have a kid,
Yeah.
if you could sit across from them in that moment, like what is the very first thing that you would say? What
Yeah.
would you offer to them?
Well, one of the tips in the book in that specific chapter, Fear of Money, I mean, there's so many tools you can use in that moment to feel more at peace with whatever you're facing. But one is to use your example, if it's like buying a home, which is like the biggest purchase most of us will ever endeavor. Do I have all the information I need? What do I still need to learn? Is my fear coming from a place of unknowing? Because fear loves to thrive in the unknown, in the lack of literacy. That's where fear lives, right? So what are there things that I need to go figure out to feel more at peace with this decision? That's number 1. Number 2 is, let's say you have all the information and you're still feeling afraid. So then maybe the question is, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? You buy this house and you realize this was an absolute mistake. I made a huge financial mistake. Well, you're still breathing, so that's good. You're still alive. The world hasn't ended. But I understand that you want to maybe reverse this or change course, and that's okay. Like, you're allowed, first of all, to make a mistake of this scale. Lots of people do, but the work now that you must do to be able to, and like your heart's like, you got to buy the house, you got to buy the house, still buy the house, even if the worst case scenario happens, fine, go buy the house, but at least do the work of playing out that worst case scenario and figuring out now preemptively what you would do in that moment. What is your plan B and C? When we moved to Montclair, New Jersey from Brooklyn, we had, I felt, all the answers we needed, but there's still a lot that you don't know that you can't possibly know until you go and do the thing. And, there's so much that's not within our control. So that's why I say, like, you're allowed to make these big life decisions. It might backfire and it may have nothing to do with you. It's just lifes. So you go, and in our minds, we knew that this could backfire. Maybe, God forbid, it was COVID. Like, what if one of us gets sick or disabled, can't work, income drops, or we just don't like it? The neighborhood's we're not jiving. The school district, maybe we got sold a false bill of goods. I don't know. And now we're really reconsidering. It's like, okay, so you make a decision and you can make another decision. Remember that. The best thing you can do now before you make decision A is to kind of explore what the options may be for you in the event that you do want to jump ship. Can you rent? Can you move to another town? Do you have enough in savings so that if you're miserable, but moving takes time, that you can continue to live there or maybe not, and that your finances could cover those extra expenses of the transition and, figuring things out. And so that's what I mean by, when the fear arrives, kind of internally asking questions. It's like putting a mirror up to your face. Like, what would you, Priya, do in that moment? Don't wait for it to happen.
Okay, confession time. We talk to high earners every day who feel like they might be behind with their money. If that's you, you're probably not behind, but you do need a plan. Visit stashwealth.com and our fiduciary advisors will help you build one. Back to the episode.
Yeah. That's so comforting. It's such a simple principle, but remembering that most decisions are reversible. And by simply playing out the worst case scenario, you get a sense of comfort about what you would need to do if you decided that that was the
Yeah.
wrong decision. Wow.
And fear of money is sort of an amalgamation of many other fears. We fear making financial decisions. We're afraid of failure and we're afraid of rejection. And so the fear of money, I actually placed it strategically in the book in the middle, because fear, at least the fears that I introduce in the book, they kind of like build on each other. So the book starts with the fear of rejection, I think is the first chapter. And then it's loneliness. And then it's, then there's FOMO, and then there's the fear of failure, and then there's the fear of money. And so you kind of understand that fear grows with you. Like when you're young, you don't have a fear of money. Most of us don't, because we don't even know what it is. We don't really have the same stresses that our parents may be having. We're not fearing how to pay the mortgage if we're lucky, right? So, but we do experience fear of failure or fear of rejection, fear of loneliness. And so then as we get older, those fears don't go away. And then introducing money, I think part of why people assume they can't make a bad financial decision is because they're afraid of looking like a failure, failing themselves too. So I want
Totally.
to give you that permission to say, don't go in blind. I'm not here to promote impulse financial moves, but if you aren't scared ahead of a big financial decision, you're not doing it right. You should be scared, because when you're scared, you're asking yourself, hopefully, the right questions.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So you also talk about the fear of rejection, and I want to apply this for the couples out there listening. So Can you talk a little bit about how the fear of rejection may show up in couples trying to merge their money mindsets? Like if someone's listening right now and they're holding back from starting that conversation with their partner because they don't want to get shut down or told no, like what are some of the things they should be thinking about to help them get started?
Yeah, the fear of rejection is so universal. It's like primal. We don't want to be out of the group, so to speak, because back in the Stone Ages, back in the Flintstone era, like that would mean getting eaten by a woolly mammoth. Like acceptance was survival. And so that primal fear has endured to modern society. It has modernized, but it shows up in, like, to your point, like the discourse between you and your partner around money. Will they think I'm too spendy? Will they think I'm frivolous? Will they think I don't know anything? When the fear of rejection pops up, I think a good question to ask is, am I fearing the rejection from this person, or that, from myself? Like, am I afraid that I'm going to feel stupid and dumb?
I
Let's
see.
take a step back. Like, this person, you've created sort of a monster out of this partner of yours before really having the conversation. You've assumed a lot. And when you're assuming a lot, it's maybe because there's this underlying fear that you don't think you're enough. You don't think that you have what it takes. And your partner can't help you with that. That's on you to strengthen. And also to know that when the context of financial conversations and this fear of rejection, that everybody has a money story. And when we fear money in the context of relationships, it would be really valuable for everybody to figure out each person's money story, because money narratives, as we know, they determine a lot of like how we end up relating to money today as adults. And so you may be in a relationship assuming a lot about your partner. Like they are not maybe as this with their money as you are, like generous or helpful or organized. And you just assume that it's because like they're trying to annoy you, or like, why can't they make this change? They're not doing it for me. Because maybe it's deep seated, it's deep rooted, right? It's because they grew up with in an environment that taught them that modeled this for them, or they're doing it in retaliation of an experience that they had growing up. Maybe they had a parent who was really terribly frivolous with spending. Maybe they grew up in a household that did declare bankruptcy. Then as an adult, they sort of took the opposite role of that, where they became extremely tight with money. So when you fear rejection around money in your relationship, and people are usually both feeling it at the same time,
Yeah.
they're not going to understand me. We'll get to understand each other, and not just the today part of the story, but as you were growing up and as recently as maybe a few years before you got together, because recency bias is also a big part of why we have certain relationships with money. If we were the sort that got out of college during the Great Recession and didn't get a job right away and lived with our parents for 5 years and never was able to buy a home, I mean, maybe, yeah, in your late 30s, you have sort of a disdain for the financial system. You don't trust bank accounts. You don't trust things. And like, that's not just an attitude that came out of nowhere, that there's a story behind that. So take that time to really learn these things about each other. And then getting into the numbers will be a lot simpler, I hope, I think. That's how it was in our relationship. Before we got into what's your credit score, what's in your bank account, what's your paycheck, we spent time really observing a lot of our behaviors, learning about each other, how we were raised, single mom, immigrant parents, and so that is important context, which informs how people end up managing their money. It's not an excuse. They always say trauma is not an excuse, it's context.
So brilliant. There are about 100 good nuggets in what you just said. We always sort of seem to think everybody else has it figured out, and there's something
Nobody
that
knows
we
anything.
and nobody knows.
That's
Well,
the title of this episode. Nobody knows anything. People are
because
just really good at faking it sometimes.
exactly. Studies show that we inherit our money ways from as early as childhood, and our parents didn't have anything figured out. So we're all coming to the table a little little effed up. But you brought up some interesting questions. So when did you and your partner, when did you guys get into that kind of stuff? When do you think is the right time to start those pointed questions?
First date. No, I'm kidding. I mean, some people will go there, and I would love to be a fly on the wall on that date. But I think naturally it should come up before you're about to maybe go in on a big financial move together. For us, it was moving in, literally moving in together. For others, it might be when you start to share in some expenses that are big. Maybe it's a pet, maybe it's like annual vacations. Yeah, I mean, gosh, we could do a whole other episode. There's this whole internet trend right now, this like communication around money and dating of like, women, you should find a guy that's going to pay for everything, including your lifestyle, because that's true masculinity. And I feel so bad for these guys that we're reducing them to this one responsibility. And if they don't fulfill that, like they're doomed.
You're
Forget what
right.
I
That
think
is a
about
whole
women.
nother
Yeah,
episode.
that's a whole other episode. So
And it's
say this.
fascinating.
I say this assuming people listening are not of that camp, that like they do understand the importance of transparency around money in a relationship, of being curious and needing to know what your partner earns and what's their debt situation like from college, all of that. So naturally, I think a good time to bring a lot of that up is when you're about to get into some money stuff, and it's not the day before your wedding. It comes up a lot sooner.
So many people wait way too long. We completely agree with you at Stash Wealth. It's when you move in together is usually that time when these conversations actually arise very organically, and that allows for just an easier segue into some difficult questions.
Right. And if you're not the couple that moves in together first, goes right. Remember when that was taboo? Like, oh my God, you're going to live together? That's interesting. So maybe you don't do that, but then there's still opportunities to talk about money. It could be like on your 1 year anniversary, when you feel like the relationship is going to the next level, then next level stuff is money
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah, and because money touches everything, you don't even have to approach it in the beginning, in the first few questions, from a more tactical perspective. It can be more qualitative and around the soft stuff.
And just keep your eyes and ears open. Take notes, and find better times to don't like, ambush your partner. But I think just you can learn a lot from just observing and not to conclude and come to conclusions on your own about those observations, but just, be smart. And if you start seeing patterns, then that's when you bring it up. Like I've noticed that you keep a lot of cash in your apartment, or I noticed that um your mom calls and asks for money a lot. Is this something that do you have a formal like arrangement around this? Like, because often in married couples, you realize like one partner might say like, I didn't realize that we'd have a third person in this marriage that we're supporting, like an aging parent. And that's increasingly becoming normal. But just to have an awareness of that so you can feel like you're doing it together and not like one person's doing it behind your back while you're married.
That's an excellent example of a finance question that doesn't immediately occur to you as a finance question. Talking about taking care of aging parents is an amazing segue for a very colorful conversation between most couples. Can you finish the sentence for me? Fear is actually.
Fear is actually a tool, a helpful tool.
Love it.
I could also say fear is a friend. I feel like I'm there. Not everyone is yet. So
Fear is a friend.
I will start with a tool, but if you really like want to know how I feel, it's that fear is a friend.
I have a lot to learn. I thought about getting a tattoo that said "Do it scared" because I just feel like everything I do as an entrepreneur, I am shit
Yeah.
scared.
Well, someone gets, I interviewed a serial entrepreneur one time recently, a billionaire who's like started like 9 companies. He's like in his 70s now. And he said that many people make the mistake that entrepreneurs are fearless and risk tolerant. He said, I'm here to tell you, we are afraid all the time. The difference is that we know how to calculate for risk. We do the work. And I interpret that as also the work of understanding your fears, right? When you're assessing risk, how you have to include your fears in that assessment. That calculation is not just, what's the probability that it's going to rain? It's also what's the probability that I will be okay when it rains because I'm equipped. And if I'm not equipped, how do I get equipped? Because it probably will rain. It probably will rain. I better get an extra umbrella.
Love. That goes back to your original point, like bringing it full circle, playing out the worst case scenario, coming up with your plan B and C, and that bringing it almost takes away some of the power of the fear. Not to say that you should shy away
Right.
from it, but it allows
It
you to
throws the
understand the
fear
fear.
in the passenger seat as opposed to being in the driver's seat. You're driving that.
Excellent way to put it. Yeah, that is a perfect note to end on. This was great, Farnoosh. I loved chatting with you. We'll have to have you back on.
Anytime. Congratulations on all the success of your
Thank
podcast.
you. Thank you. I
I
do have
mean,
one more question
okay,
before we
go
let you
for
go.
it.
So we always end with a segment called Best Bite because I'm a huge foodie and I'm always looking for a good recommendation. And since you're local for me, this is going to be even more fun because I can get there ASAP. So what I want to know is what's the best thing you've eaten recently? Where do I need to go? And what do I need to order?
All right, I have the perfect place. You'll have to come to Montclair for it, but you're familiar with Chef Morimoto, the Iron Chef?
Definitely.
Yes. Well, he's opened a new restaurant in Montclair called by Morimoto. I actually got the opportunity to go and preview the meals, meet the chef. I host a local podcast in town called the Montclair Pod. So they had a whole media night to try all the amazing foods. Everything's great, but the best is the Wagyu steak, which is just cooked to perfection. And, I hope it does well. I wanna mention it because I that particular location where it is in Montclair has had a sort of a revolving door of restaurants. I think it's
Okay.
just it's a big space. Restaurants, the margins aren't great. So I think if anyone can do it, it's Chef Morimoto. He's such a legend. So if anyone's in town and wants, it's not like just a casual place though. I will say you got to really go for a special occasion because it can be pricey.
Okay, you are speaking my language. I am such a red meat eater, so I am
And the
going to have to
cocktails are divine.
even better. Even better. Oh my gosh. Well, it's going in the rotation. I'm going to get it on the list and I have to get out there soon. Before I let you go, where can people find more Farnoosh?
Well, you can listen to So Money 3 days a week on your favorite podcast player. And we have a So Money members club. You can learn more at somoneymembers.com.
Amazing. And of course, don't forget to grab a copy of A Healthy State of Panic.
Yes, let's talk about the book. God bless the book. Yeah, when you write a book and then time goes by, you're like, oh yeah, the book. When meanwhile it was like your entire brain and life for 3 years. But yeah, thank
And
you
it's
so
your
much.
fourth book?
It's my fourth book. My fourth. Yeah,
You have
my
to go
fourth.
grab the whole collection. Farnoosh, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you,
today. This was
Priya.
awesome. To everyone listening, if you love this episode, please send it to a friend who's navigating a big financial decision and maybe letting fear hold them back. That's how we grow the show and keep bringing on powerhouse guests like Farnoosh. Also, in case you missed it, we recently won the Wealth Management Industry Award for Best Investor Podcast of the Year, which would not have happened without all of you tuning in, sharing these episodes, and joining the conversation. So I am truly, truly grateful. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The F Word with Priya Malani. If you like what you heard, hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave us a review while you're at it. We're approval junkies. Don't forget, you can find a ton of great resources, content, courses, and other freebies at stashwealth.com. Now, for the capital S stuff our lawyers want us to say. StashWealth is a registered investment advisor. Content presented is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to make an offer or solicitation for any specific securities, product, service, or strategy. Consult with a qualified investment advisor, that's us, before implementing any strategy. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Past performance does not guarantee future results. There, we said it.
Did I have that up?